The sun of a scorching Roman summer fell obliquely upon Vatican City, illuminating the millennia-old patina of St. Peter's Basilica. In the depths of the vast complex, far from the sight of pilgrims and cardinals, an engineering team led by Dr. Alessandra Ricci, an art restorer at the Vatican Museum, was overseeing a routine maintenance project in the western wing of the Apostolic Library. The goal was simple: to modernize the ventilation systems in the oldest manuscript vaults, dating back to the 14th century. Give it a like, subscribe, and share. Let's begin. The work focused on a stone wall adjacent to the Sala Paolina, a section that, according to 17th century plans, had been a simple pantry before being walled off and converted into part of the library structure. Using low-frequency ground-penetrating radar, Alessandra's technicians detected a structural anomaly right behind that wall. It was not the solid infill they expected, but a regularly shaped cavity that did not appear in any of the historical architectural plans. The cavity was approximately 3 meters wide, 4 meters long, and 2.5 meters high. Its existence was an architectural impossibility for the Vatican, a structure that had been subject to obsessive engineering control for over 5 centuries. Dr. Ricci, a woman of iron discipline and a healthy skepticism towards mysticism, ordered a test drilling. The drill penetrated 30 centimeters of Baroque-era mortar and brick, followed by a void of dry air. When the team inserted a fiber optic microcamera through the hole, the image that appeared on the monitoring screen caused absolute silence among the 5 technicians and engineers present. The chamber was not a mere pantry. The walls were not plastered, but covered with frescoes of astonishing antiquity, painted in a style that predated the Renaissance. The air inside the chamber seemed static, and an odor of stale incense and dry oils filtered through the small hole. The discovery was reported to the Vatican Secretary of State within 15 minutes. The reaction was immediate. The area was sealed by the Swiss Guard. The ventilation project was suspended, and Dr. Ricci was placed in command of a top-secret investigation, with the direct warning that any information leak would be treated as a violation of state security. 1. The opening and the evidence of heresy. The controlled demolition of the wall was carried out under dim light and tense silence. Upon opening the access, Dr. Ricci and Father Lorenzo Mancini, the chief archivist of the Apostolic Library and the only cleric authorized to participate in the investigation, entered the sealed chamber. The clandestine frescoes. The first thing that caught Dr. Ricci's attention were the frescoes. The walls of the small chamber were covered with intense and disturbing images in a pictorial style reminiscent of Coptic or early Byzantine painting, but with a radically heretical theme: Jesus and duality. One wall depicted Jesus not on the cross or as a glorious monarch, but in an act of spiritual communion with a female figure dressed in scarlet robes. Both were represented within a circle of light, with their hands clasped in a symbolic gesture that Dr. Ricci's art historians identified as the Alchemical Marriage, or the union of opposites, hieros gamos. Transmigration and the Labyrinth. Another scene showed souls represented as spheres of light ascending from decomposing bodies, guided by a winged figure through a cosmic labyrinth with 7 gates. The message was unmistakably Gnostic and Orphic, the belief in the transmigration of the soul and the existence of multiple planes beyond the single judgment. Initial dating of the frescoes, based on pigment analysis, especially the use of lapis lazuli of Afghan origin and a type of iron oxide from the Umbria region, placed them in the 3rd or 4th century AD, the exact period when the Roman Catholic Church was consolidating its dogma and actively suppressing Gnostic groups and factions that believed in the feminine lineage of faith. 2. The Lead Coffer and the origin of the secret. The center of the chamber was occupied by a small grey stone pedestal. Upon the pedestal, instead of an altar or a relic, lay a lead coffer about 80 centimeters long, completely devoid of ornamentation, sealed with a thick beeswax cord and 6 broken clay seals. Lead, a metal associated in antiquity with alchemy and saturnine restriction, was a deliberate choice for a repository, suggesting the intent to hide and protect its contents from the flow of time and energy. The opening and the explicit content. Father Mancini and Dr. Ricci used silk gloves to open the coffer, which emitted a high-pitched squeak that resonated in the silence. The interior of the lead coffer was lined with sheets of pure gold, acting as an energetic and moisture insulator. Inside, there was neither gold nor jewels, but two objects of incalculable historical and theological value: the original gospel, a book bound in goatskin, incredibly fragile. Its pages were not parchment, but papyrus treated with vegetable oils, which allowed for its preservation. The text was written in Koine Greek, the language of the original New Testament. The text was not a canonical gospel, but a chronicle of the early apostles, detailing the existence and doctrine of a child of Jesus and Mary Magdalene, and the family's subsequent flight to the western provinces of the Roman Empire, possibly Gaul or Britannia. The chronicle confirmed that the bloodline was considered the true lineage of the Holy Grail, a knowledge that had been actively purged from historical records by the ecclesiastical councils of the 4th and 5th centuries. The Codex of St. Peter's prophecies. The second object was a bound olive wood codex. It contained a series of prophecies attributed to St. Peter, the supposed first bishop of Rome and the foundational rock of the Church. The prophecies were not the usual apocalyptic visions, but a series of warnings directed at his successors, a prediction of the Church's future corruption by temporal power and the suppression of truth in favor of dogmatic authority. The most devastating part for the Vatican's narrative was the prophecy indicating that the maximum corruption would coincide with the date of the coffer's rediscovery, the 21st century. Peter not only predicted the betrayal of his vision, but condemned his successors with foreknowledge. 3. The theological conflict and the geopolitical revelation. The content of the Lead Coffer triggered a crisis of faith and a power rupture at the heart of the Vatican. The secret was no longer historical. It was an existential threat to dogma and institutional legitimacy. The dilemma of apostolic succession. Father Mancini, a man of deep faith, faced a dilemma that tormented him. The authority of the Church is based on apostolic succession through St. Peter. If the Gospel demonstrated the existence of a carnal lineage that Peter knew and respected, and if Peter himself condemned the corruption of that succession, the entire structure of the papacy crumbled. Give it a like, subscribe, and share. The Church's 2,000-year narrative, that authority comes from the absence of carnal lineage and the presence of the Holy Spirit through the institution, would be replaced by the heretical narrative that legitimate authority resided in the descendants of Jesus and the esoteric knowledge, gnosis, that had been suppressed. The reaction of the Roman Curia. The highest levels of the Roman Curia, the Vatican's central government, sprang into action. The decision was unanimous and ruthless. The knowledge of the coffer must not see the light of day. Destruction and silence. A powerful faction advocated for the total and immediate destruction of the Gospel and the Codex, and the permanent closure of the chamber. The argument was that the revelation of this material, regardless of its authenticity, would cause an irreversible schism and a collapse of the morality and order that the Church had maintained for 20 centuries. Secret exploitation. A minority faction, led by a Jesuit cardinal, proposed the secret analysis of the material to understand the Church's vulnerabilities and possibly to reform the doctrine internally over several decades, gradually introducing elements of gnosis and spiritual feminism without acknowledging the original source. Dr. Ricci, a scientist at heart, found herself in an information war with the fate of Christianity and the history of Europe in her hands. 4. The leak and the inevitable transformation of Europe. The secret chamber, the chamber of primary heresy, as one archivist called it, was sealed again with a reinforced concrete wall, its location recorded only in 3 encrypted copies held by the highest authorities. However, the secret could not be completely contained. Dr. Ricci, before she was ordered to surrender control of her entire research team, had made a moral decision driven by the weight of history. She photographed and digitally transcribed the key passages of the Gospel and the Codex, using an encryption system developed by her brother, a cryptographer at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. The leaked legacy. 8 months after the chamber was sealed, Dr. Ricci resigned from her post, citing reasons of conscience. 6 months after her resignation, an anonymous manuscript containing the encrypted translation of the Lead Coffer texts was leaked to 3 of Europe's main secular universities, Oxford, Sorbonne, and Heidelberg, and the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs, due to the mention of the Judean lineage. The initial publication was not in the form of a major media story, which would have been easily discredited. Instead, It was a slow and methodical academic publication of new Gnostic texts of unknown origin, along with linguistic analyses of the historical depth and coherent dating of the writing. The silent change in Europe. What was found in the Vatican chamber did not change Europe with a great revolutionary blow, but with a slow and irreversible drip of historical truth. Academic theological readjustment. In universities, the study of Gnostic Christianity and the role of women in the early church drastically accelerated. The concept of the inner Christ and the sacred marriage moved from the margin to the center of theological discussion, weakening the control of dogma. Spiritual transformation. The European public, already secularized and skeptical, found in the leaked concepts, Jesus' lineage, reincarnation, inner divinity, a new basis for spirituality that was historically grounded and personally empowering. The concept of external ecclesiastical authority weakened, while the authority of individual consciousness strengthened. Geopolitical impact. The knowledge of the carnal lineage by the three Western powers and one Middle Eastern power became a leverage point against the Vatican in political and social negotiations, especially on issues of human rights and freedom of conscience. The Vatican's secret chamber, intended to be the tomb of truth, became, through the audacity of a restorer, the cradle of resurgent gnosis that, throughout the 21st century, would force Europe to confront not only its history, but the true nature of its spiritual foundation. Father Mancini and Dr. Ricci understood that what had been found should not see the light to protect the institution, but it had to see the light to free humanity from the 1700-year dogmatic enclosure. Give it a like, subscribe, and share.